Hello and welcome my friends in another Angular 17 video. Today we're talking about Angular control flow, and by that I mean the conditions and loops that you need inside of your component template. So let's have a look on the minimal shopping cart that I have in here. I only have 3 items in there, and what I need to do is to have an if statement that checks if the application status is ready. I'll show the cart items. So let's declare a variable called status that equals to ready. And let's add an if statement that it checks if the status equals to ready, then the cart items should show up. If we save our changes, nothing should happen because the check is satisfied. But if we change the status value to something else like loading and save our changes, the cart items should be gone. Now we need an additional check for the loading status. So let's add another if statement that it checks if the status equals to loading. We will show a loading indicator. As you see, we have 2 if statements that check for the same variable, and it is impossible for both of them to be satisfied at the same time. So in that case, we'd better use if else. So I'll say if status equals to loading, I'll show the loading indicator, else I'll show the cart items. That looks good. If the requirement you have is more specific, then you can add another if statement right after the else. So if status equals to loading, else if status equals to ready, then show the cart items. That also works, perfect. What if we have a third status, like error status for instance? So our status variable supports 3 values, loading, error, and ready. Now we need an additional if statement that checks for the error status. So if status equals to error, I will show a message to the users to notify them that something went wrong. Perfect. If you take a closer look on what we have here, you'll see that we have multiple if statements for the same variable. It would be ideal in that case to use switch statement. So let's replace all these if statements with switch. So we'll add a switch case that checks for the status variable, and in there we'll add all the cases that we had. So the loading case, where we show the loading indicator, and the error case, where we show a message to the users to notify them that something went wrong, and finally the ready case, where we show the cart items. That was briefly the conditions in Angular 17. Let's now have a look on how to do for loops in the component template. So as you see that our cart items are hard-coded, which is not realistic. So let's declare a variable called products. Products will be an array of strings that contains all our cart items. In order to present all the values of the products array inside of the template, we'll use the for loop to iterate through the array. So we'll say for product of products track product. The track product part is mandatory now in the new for syntax. And inside of the for loop, we'll present the cart item. Let's add a new item in the array to recognize our changes and save our changes, and it works perfect. To make this even more realistic, we'll convert the products array to an array of objects. So let's say that every product has an ID, a name, and a price. Now we can get back to our for loop to update the properties that we use in there. So instead of tracking the entire product object, we'll be tracking the product with ID, because track needs a unique identifier to be able to easily and quickly track any changes happens to each item of the array. And in the presentation part, I'll be using the product.name and also maybe the product.price. This is how it looks, looking good. And that was how you do for loops in the component template. Right, my friends, that was it for today's video. And if you ever have any question for me, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer all of them. Can't wait to see you next video. Bye.